Alright, here we go. So in this video I'm going to talk about my level 85 single player Bowazon. Alright, so the Bowazon. Let's talk about the character in general. Um, Amazon's good class. They have some drawbacks, and Bowazons have some drawbacks I'll talk about. In general, they're better against large groups of monsters than single targets, which is good until it's bad. And they do quite poorly on bosses. It takes a long time to kill Bale. Um, Diablo's easier, but he can actually even kill me sometimes. And there are other drawbacks as well, such as the build is not very defensive. But so we'll start with the skills. Obviously, no javelin and spears skills. Bow and crossbow. So here's where the action is. There are different ways you can go with this. Obviously, I did not want to be a cold Bowazon. It's just a decision I made early on. I wanted to do physical damage, just the kind of build I wanted to make. So the stat distribution here, so max strafe, and this is really going to be your number one skill. For basically any moderate amount of monsters. Guided Air I max because I use it on single targets, and you max it just to get the mana cost down and the damage up. So yeah, it's a good one to max. You have some leeway here into how many. Some people might prefer multiple shot to strafe. I prefer strafe because for a number of reasons. First of all, with strafe you get more knockback. Knockback doesn't proc as much on the multiple shot, and multiple shot takes more mana. Its mana cost increases as you put levels into it. But you do want to use it sometimes. I put 10 in it. Gives you 11 arrows. That's pretty good. It gives you a pretty decent spread, and you could control the spread a little bit with how far you place your mouse from your character. So that's useful. So I found 10 to be all I need. Passive and magic, again here you get a lot of leeway. What might stick out here is I put 17 into Valkyrie. I believe 17 is the skill level at which they get a rare spear, but you're going to want to put a lot of points into Valkyrie because, like I said, Bowazon is a very fragile character. You have your Merc, but you really need another meat shield, and your Valkyrie is in many cases better than your Merc because it really does take quite a lot to kill the Valkyrie, and the Valkyrie does do a little bit of damage, not much, but does a little. You can actually see it does some. But the Valkyrie, the thing that's critical about it is it respawns a lot more often than your Merc, so it keeps up with you, and it's a little more reliable than your Merc in that way. These two, some people say that you don't want to put any skills in these because it interrupts your attack and you can get into a lock situation. That is a terrible idea. I wish I had more points in these. I would like to get them up to level 4 each, about. 2 is kind of all I felt I could afford, and it's pretty decent, You could also play with the distribution. I just put them all even. Maybe you want more points in dodge or avoid than evade, for instance. Avoid is a good one because it happens when you're attacking, as does dodge. So maybe you want to put a couple more of these and maybe one less in those in evade. Critical strike, this is huge. This is a good one. It obviously gets into diminishing returns. I get it. It's above 50%. 9. If I had it at 8, that would be fine as well. I felt 9 was a good stopping point. Pierce, get it up to about 60% because your belt, I'll get into gear later, but Razor Tail, I think it ups your Pierce by about 33%. So, if you get this up to about 60%, you're piercing over 90% of the time. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And then penetrate. Not a huge attack rating bonus, but basically this is what you want to dump the rest of your skill points into after a certain point. I mean, there's a lot of little decisions you can make, and honestly, one is probably not that much greater than the other. But that's the basic skill distribution. Let's talk about stats, because you can do some pretty interesting stats stuff with a Bowazon. A lot of people would just get the minimum strength they need for their gear, and then dump the rest in the dex, damage, attack rating. That's really a good thing to do, especially because Bowazons don't get a lot of bonus from Vitality. I got my Vitality up to the point where I had 800 life, and then I dumped the rest in the dex. The reason I did that is because my defenses, I mean, you can see my resistances here, they're terrible. They're really terrible. So, you say on a Bowazon you don't get hit. Well, you know what? You do get hit sometimes, and you need to be able to take a couple of hits at least. So, yeah, 800 life, though, I felt was good. If you put it down to 700, okay. Yeah, it's doable, probably. So you have decisions to make around that. Just whatever you feel comfortable with, but you're probably going to want to put some into Vitality. And the rest into Dex, like I said. So let's talk about the gear. Laying of Hands. Yeah, what can you say? It's just really good. It's just probably the best PVM gloves in the game. If you want to do... first of all, I use the attack speed to get up to the breakpoint I need. Fire resist 50, like it's huge, especially on a character that has very little resistances. There are all sorts of things that do fire damage, and so it's just good to have, just good to get that positive. And this is a huge help with that. Obviously, damage to demons. All bosses are demons. Like, I don't know what percentage, a high percentage of the monsters in the game are demons. So that's a good one. Other things you could consider, depending on your bow and other gear. Some crafted 20 IS knockback gloves are a consideration. Klee Claws would be a consideration, depending on how much attack speed you have from other sources. Maybe some Crushing Blow gloves. Something with lifesteal. You get to do a 20 IS, plus 3 or plus 2 passive magic skills. That's probably not a bad option. So you got a lot of options, but I felt like Laying of Hands was the best. Ravenfrost, obvious. Got to get Cannot Be Frozen, plus huge dex, huge attack rating, cold damage. It's just dope. Razor Tail I talked about. Some people would prefer a Nosferatu's. Kind of to you, I don't need the attack speed. I don't think the slow target does very much at all, especially when you have knockback. And I have a Holy Freeze Smirk. It's just like overkill, and it's just a small effect. If you need the lifesteal, it's an option, but then again, String of Ears would probably be a better option, especially if you're so fragile. Then again, the strength, the mana on kill is really good, so yeah, definitely one to consider. And obviously I have it in my stash, I've tried it out, but I prefer the Razor Tail. Dex, max damage, piercing. It's kind of like too good. It's really good. Another choice I made is Gore Riders. A lot of Zons go for the War Travs. I just felt like Gore Riders gave me more damage. I didn't do a whole lot of testing, but I kind of just did runs with one on then the other. I felt like Gore Riders just make it go a little bit better. First of all, the Crushing Blow. I think there's a penalty for ranged attacks on Crushing Blow, but with the Helm, which I'll talk about, I have 25%. It's good to have some Crushing Blow, especially when your damage is not very high. And on a Bowazon, especially a single-player Bowazon, your damage is not going to be huge. It just ain't going to be. So Deadly Strike, you do have piercing attack, so you don't get like the full 15% bonus, but you do get some. It probably improves my chance to do double damage by like 7%. It's good. And then Open Wounds. Open Wounds, I think, is actually, it's kind of like the reason why people often put poison on a Bowazon. It's it's a similar type of damage over time. I think it's really good to have, and so overall, those three together, plus you get the 5 more run walk, and vitality, who cares? Strength, not a big deal. So I feel like these are just the better option. So let's get to the good stuff here. So the bow is an upped gold strike arch, up to a hydra bow. You put the shell in it together with the 20 IS gloves. That's all the increased attack speed you need. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can get it with 85%. In which case, it might be good to. Well, your thing is you're probably still going to want some leg of hands. So, but if you have some kind of like increased attack speed, 15 increased attack speed jewel with some other bonus, that might be a better option than the shale. But I think you need the full 20%. You can check me on that. Then 240 enhanced damage. The range is 150 to 250, so that's a great roll. Bonus to attack rating, not a great roll, but it's not terrible. And then the damage to demons undead, they range from, I think, maybe 100 to 200, or is it 150 to 200? Either way, it's a pretty good roll. And replenish life, more useful than you might think. I actually had another one of these that I personalized. I thought it was a pretty good roll. It's one off on the bonus to attack rating. But I found a better one. And so I think it actually gives me like 100 more damage about. So went with that. And the armor, duress, yeah, super good. Good to get some faster hit recovery. Enhanced damage, cold damage, crushing blow, talked about. Oh man, I have more. Yeah, wow. So, okay. Yeah. So I guess I have about 40% crushing blow then. That's pretty nice. And then open wounds. Like I said, it's very good to have. Defense, whatever. And then some all res. You got to get it where you can. I mean, it's just a terrible situation, and it's never going to be good on a Bowazon. Oh, and the ring. Oh yeah, so you do need mana leech on a Bowazon, and you're gonna want some lifesteal too. You really need both. So a dual leech ring is really good to have. And this ring is pretty dope. Honestly, it's like maybe one of the best items I've found on single player. Attack rating, dual leech, dual res. I mean, if it's had 25 fire res instead of 7, it would be like it would be crazy. It would be real good. But lightning resist is good enough on its own. Then you get a little fire. Why not? That's great. Atma's Scarab. This is how you deal with physical immunes on this character. I do have my Merc, a Reaper's Toll, but this is basically how you do it. And the other stats, it gives you a little bit of attack rating. It's not huge, but it's something. And then the poison resistance, some poison damage, actually. It's okay. And the poison resistance is nice. Poison damage is like one of those things that's just it's just so annoying. So you can never really prioritize getting poison resistance because it's just you're just going to sacrifice too much for that for a stat that's not very useful. But it's just good to have some get you into positive, so you're not taking losing 20 life every second. It's just ridiculous. All right, and then the helm. This is the greatest thing I have in the character, probably. Maybe next to the bow. So this is a great roll. I'll get into the duels in a minute, but the basic 320 defense roll, I believe that's perfect. And then the strength roll is actually 34 out of a max of 35, so that's 1 off. And it's 2 sockets rather than 1. So it's a pretty close to perfect giant skull. Now, what are the jewels in it? One of the jewels is pretty awesome. So it's 30 enhanced damage, 8 minimum damage, 3 to strength, which is how it gets to 37 to 34, and 26 fire resist, which is how my fire resist gets into the positive. And then the other jewel is just 25 to max damage. Maybe I should have waited for an even cooler jewel to come along. So this adds 8 to 25. It actually adds Oh wow, I lose my... yeah, so it adds a lot of damage, I'll say. Well, not a lot, but a decent amount. Just the 8 to 25 in itself. And so yeah, that's the gear. On Switch, like I try to have on all my characters that do physical damage. Demon Limb, and I have a lidless. The reason I have a lidless is just for casting Valkyrie. Just just to boost it that much. I mean, what else? What else could I put? I don't really know. Merc, Standard, Tretch, Reaper's Toll, Golems. He's a Holy Freeze Merc. It'd be nice to have a Might Merc, but really, because he's a meat shield, it's for my benefit, but it's mostly for his benefit. The Holy Freeze just translates into like a lot of damage reduction. It just slows everything. You take a lot less damage with the Holy Freeze, so it's just you just kind of have to do it. The cool thing with the Bowazon, though, is you do get into alternative setups. I've tried these. I've got a Hell Rack here. It's actually pretty. I think it's one off from Perfect. Breeza, I haven't upped it, but they're just too slow. I even have another Giant Skull that has 30 increased attack speed and some mana I have to kill. Oh, this I put on my Merc. This is a great thing about single players. You get to use these items that have a really like kind of a niche usefulness, but when you need them, they're like amazing. So if I have to do I never have to do, but if I do a Bale run, this is the setup I'll run. I'll put the Kira's, an Ort, the Kira's with an Ort, plus Thunder Gods, and I still don't have max lightning resist, and then I'll put this on my Merc, so he just like will not die, and hopefully neither will I from Souls. So that's what you got to do for oh Jesus, when you're running Bale. But I don't usually run Bale on this character. I did to level up a bit, but it is just such a pain to actually kill Bale. I mean, I'll even do the run and then just quit and not kill Bale because it's really a pain. But what you can do, we'll get into some gameplay here, so what you can do is Chaos runs. So the damage, 2k guided arrow, 1.5k strafe. Like, it's pretty low. It's actually pretty low, but it can be more effective than you might think because your arrows are piercing, so it's 1.5k, but if it's hitting 3 enemies, it's actually a decent amount of damage output in total. Plus, if you're casting Amp, and this is why I use Strafe, because you get more knockback and you get more chances to cast Amp. So it casts pretty often, and so you're doing, so your damage output is higher than you might think. Yeah, so the decision of when to use Guided Arrow, when to use Strafe, it's kind of just how you're feeling it. It's it really has to do with kind of like the layout of the monster. See, if they're all spread out like this, and I want to hit them in all, okay, I wasn't doing it then, but then you might want to switch over. And like I said, you can get a huge spread go when you put your cursor close to your character, or you get a more narrow spread when you aim out a bit. But the thing that makes this build work is really, on single-player Bowazon, you absolutely need knockback. I mean, it's like maybe the most critical stat. So you just keep knocking them back and knocking them back and knocking them back, and eventually they'll die. But yeah, definitely the most annoying thing about this character is the lack of damage and the lack of defense. Oh, whoa! Woo! You see that shit? Wow, I might be playing a little sloppy because I'm recording a video, but yeah, it's nice to save shrines for when you get. Should I keep that? Nah, fuck it. I tried using tried using a Act 1 Merc for a bit, but you really need the meat shield. Even though he's way back there now. It actually, eventually he'll come in handy, believe it or not. Let's see this guy sneaking up. Just knock him back. Knock him back. Keep going. And as you walk around, you do testing, and sometimes you just shoot a couple arrows out, and you'll be able to tell if there's a monster out there. And the other thing about having 800 life is, you know, you might think you're a Bowazon, you'll just be, you'll stay away from all the enemies and you'll never get hit. But the thing is, to get your Valkyrie and Merc in the fight, you actually need to yourself be pretty close. Like, where's the Merc right now? Oh, sometimes I get this glitch where my Merc goes invisible. There he goes. But, so you need to be pretty close to the enemies yourself if you're gonna get your NPCs in the fight there. Is that the correct term? Anyway. But you can see so a Bowazon is it's really not too expensive to make, and it's actually, like, despite the low life and the low resistance, you know, as you can see, it's a perfectly hell viable build. You know, I'm staying at full life, max mana the whole time, just about. And also, the great thing is, so when you don't get hit that much, you know, my ring only has 4 and 4 mana and life leech, but that's really enough when you don't get hit that often. If you were gonna run multiple shot, like a maxed out multiple shot, you would maybe need more mana leech, or you need to reserve your use of it for times when there are a lot of mobs around. Which, yet another reason I like to use strafe, because if there's one mob around and you use strafe, well, you'll hit the guy 10 times. If there's one mob around and you're trying to use multiple shot, it's just kind of stupid. And strafe is real good when they get in a line like this. Just boom, boom, boom. You pierce through all of them. Alright. I'm just playing all stupid now. Yeah, your Val can take damage. He heals up pretty quick herself, actually. And if not, the great thing about Valk is you just recast it. You don't need to go to town and spend 50k. Yeah, well, it's just kind of a fun character. I always wanted to. I found the giant skull. Usually what I'll do is I'll find an item and then I'll be inspired to make a character around it. So I found this giant skull. That was pretty cool. Ral, yeah. Yeah, these guys are tough. Ah. Alright guys, okay. And you protect your Merc pretty well yourself if you keep on if you keep on strafing the enemies. You know, they'll get knocked back and they'll get see, but you can get pretty close. And yeah, so they'll get knocked back and hit, and they won't be doing damage, and your Merc will be free just to keep on attacking. Yeah, so like I said, if you never know quite what's around the corner, so you send out some test arrows, and if there's something just off screen, you'll start shooting arrows, and then you know something's there. Other skills on the build, you know, decoy is actually sometimes useful. I definitely use it for, like, actually, you know, so let's do it now. How long does it last? 15 seconds. So it's a good for skill. So look how they go and attack the decoy for just a little bit. But that's good. You know, in that time, you shoot some arrows, get some cold damage on them, get some slow, get some maybe cast an amp damage or so. So decoy is actually useful. Other skills like slow missiles, but has. I'll watch Diablo now. This is terrible. Oh god. Yeah, that actually went fairly well. Sometimes Diablo he just won't behave and he'll he can actually I die on this build sometimes to Diablo. Sometimes he'll put you in a little cage and shoot a lightning thing at you, and it's just like damn, that's it. That's like you can't do anything about it. Yeah. So what else? I wish I could use a cat's eye, but Atmoscarab. Atmoscarab might be the thing that you kind of cannot substitute on the build. Everything else you could switch out and change up. Atmoscarab is how you deal with physical immunes. I don't know, if you have a Reaper's Toll on your Merc, as I do, they kind of both accomplish the same thing, decrepify and amplify damage. But your Mercs is just less reliable. It's good to control it, have it on your own character, control yourself. What else? Oh, let's go into Charms. My Charms are pretty decent on this character. Kind of standard. Let's see, there's a certain theme here. This one I like. Yeah, Runwalk. Some hit recovery. I think there's some breakpoint I hit. I don't really know what it is. I forget. These are charms I like. They might look like dupes, but because they're the same stat and the same charm face, but I actually did find them both individually. Some attack rating. This is a dope charm. This is nice. Whatever. And so yeah, that's the build. It can be a little hard to level as a Bowazon. Some of the kind of mid-range bows are not very good. Rip Hook is probably the best. I think it's a razor bow. Anyway, that's it.